So why are build tools important? Well, if you watched the first episode, you heard us talk about automation. I might be a little bit passionate, or you could call me crazy about automation. It's because I'm lazy. I don't want to do the same thing twice. I want to get more done in little time. And what build tools allow us to do is automate things. Ultimately, the other thing it does is, last week we talked about revision control. Really good build tools usually put their build processes in some sort of text document that we can check into our revision control system. And that allows us to share it amongst the team, create a standard. Again, laziness, right? We don't want to have everybody maintaining their own build for the software, because then everybody's trying to do things separately and make changes, and it's just a lot of extra work. So if we can check that in and it's some sort of text document, then we can share that document, and then all of a sudden we can automate that document with scripts. Since it's checked in, it's just a text document. If you look at Maven's one of the great examples lately. You can basically automate all your Maven things on the command line. And so I'm really passionate about making sure that we do those things. Gradle is another build tool that has more flexibility and allows some more customization. So what we have found is if Maven doesn't do it, we kind of revert to Gradle from a technology.
We've actually started, I'll say on one of our projects, starting to use Gradle more so for larger efforts. Maven's really easy to get up and running really quickly. It's a great first place to start and will scale pretty far with your application on the Java side of things. Gradle goes and takes that to the next level when you have to do more complicated things that you might not be able to do with
and
Maven.
They integrate together, right?
No, one's a replacement. Well, there's
I thought
compatibility.
It uses
Yes.
a lot of your Maven stuff. From the
Somewhat.
past.
There's some massaging that has to be done.
Okay. Not quite magic.
It's not just magic now. And then there's plenty of other build tools. Obviously, we're a little biased to Java side of things. On JavaScript, you have things like a combination of NPM or Yarn plus something like Webpack, or if you're doing React, create React app. And most frameworks on the JavaScript side have their own set of build tools around Webpack. And then a lot of languages have these build tools for you. It's about using them, about having them in place.
C# has switched to those over the last couple of years. It's been nice. Well, let's step back real quick and talk about history of build tools a little bit. I think that helps people understand the relevance of things. And so Make was kind of the original cross-platform build tool. It started with the C++ days, and actually a lot of Linux users will still see references to Make around. And so Make, the one thing that I didn't like about Make was it was a tab delimited build file. And I don't know about you guys, but I have a hard time telling tab from spaces.
I struggle with that with the YAML files nowadays. The YAML files are like the new favorite thing, and they're tab delimited or space delimited.
Yeah, I hate anything that uses spaces or tabs. And the old famous thing in the Make file was a knucklehead like me would get in there and hit a space to align something, and that would just break everything. And so I always struggled because of my need for things to be neat. Would use spaces, and it was not friendly. So it was hard to debug those kind of problems. And so kind of along came Ant, which was kind of an Apache project that was XML formatted. And so it got rid of the white space. For those of you that are aware of XML, is not a white space-based language. So that was really nice. But one thing that we found with Ant was missing was the dependency management. And so what a lot of projects did back in the day is they all had this lib folder, and you would dump all your libraries in the lib folder, and you'd have a lib/star in your Ant project. So you would pull in anything in the lib folder. Well, I'll be honest with you, it created kind of bad habits because people wouldn't pay attention to the versions of the libraries, or you'd have multiple versions in the lib folder, and it just became like a dumpster. People would just throw things in, nobody would ever clean it out, right? And eventually, it's just like the trash can at home. It's overflowing. Nobody wants to take it, clean it up. And what Maven did is they added the dependency management, and so that really helped starting to clean things up. And so that really introduced that process, and that was a big improvement. And the other thing that Maven did that I, again, very passionate about was convention over configuration. Is Ant gave you flexibility. You could choose your conventions. But the problem was then you had to code it all into your Ant scripts. So, I had something like 10 pages of Ant scripts for my builds back in the day. When we went to Maven, convention over configuration, all we did is change the file structures to follow their convention, and then they just knew where to find things. And so Maven test, Maven compile, all that stuff worked without having any setup. And so that was really nice. So it simplified our lives again, kind of lazy, automate, go to that. And so all that's important to understand the evolution of where we came from, why it's important to move forward and get to these future platforms like Gradle. Gradle supports a lot of the convention over configuration.
It does a little bit. It's definitely convention over configuration, but then heavy configuration. You can start essentially programming in Groovy in it. So it starts to give you back some of that flexibility you need nowadays with continuous integration
To do more of the advanced features.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we looked at that early on, probably 5 years ago, and started trying to use it.
It's actually the default for Android now.
Is it?
Yep. So Android now uses Gradle by default. So if anybody's on an Android app, you've used Gradle whether you knew it or not.
Yeah. So back to Maven, they introduced the concept of the artifacts, so the group ID, artifact ID, and version in the POM files. And so that allowed us to all of a sudden start doing our automatic dependency mapping. And that was really nice because now I can say, oh, hey, if I pull this dependency in, back in the day with Ant, you'd have to go, hit compile. This is the way I did it, and see what library was missing, and then you'd go find that one, you'd add it to your lib folder, hit compile again, and you'd go through that process multiple times until you had all 50 of these libraries. It was kind of back to the old Linux RPM kind of concept, right, where you'd install one and say you depended on another, and you'd have to go find these dependencies. Whereas now, with the dependency management, it'll pull them all in automatically for you. And then when you change the version, it'll update those, and it'll kind of manage everything automatically behind the scenes. And so it really takes a workload off of the developers now going forward. So that's nice. So the other thing with build tools, we want to make sure you don't confuse your IDE. Let's just say, I don't know, pick NetBeans or
IntelliJ or Eclipse, or
any of
NetBeans
those.
or Visual Studio. Well, Visual Studio Code's more of an editor, but any of these tools where they have a button that says
Compile.
Go build or compile,
F5.
Yes, it's important to understand the difference between build tools and having a uniform team-based build tool versus your IDE. In that most cases, I know Eclipse is famous for this, and I think even NetBeans, and I'm not sure about IntelliJ, but I'm sure they do, have their own set of build tools that you can go and set up a project in. So you could have your project build as an Eclipse project. The difficulty with that is now you're tied to your IDE, so your entire team needs to use that in order to build it. More than likely, their command line configuration or ability to run the build on the command line without a GUI is limited or not super supported, or if it is, there are significant limitations. Whereas any of the build tools we've mentioned before, or just an agnostic build tool, allows you to go and really have a robust command line way to interact with your build so that you can go and start automating it. You can write scripts. You can go and put it onto a continuous integration server, so something like Jenkins or there's plenty of others out there, TeamCity and anything that goes and automatically runs your build. It's a cron job that just runs it. That also means that anybody on your team can go and build it with whatever tool that they want to go and use for their editor. They don't have to go and use Eclipse or IntelliJ. So typically we see this as when you go and you create a new project, if you go open it up and you say, open up Eclipse and click create new project and create it as an Eclipse project. Well, now your build's tied to Eclipse. Instead, you want to go and say, hey, I want to create a Maven project or a Gradle project, or I think in C++ they now have CMake, which is like a more complicated make, or AutoMake. There's a whole bunch of different tools out there, but separating those two things apart are important to having a cohesive project that others can contribute to.
Well, I know I'm not going to be everybody's favorite person when I say this morning, but I'm really not a big fan of forcing all of the developers to use the same IDE, right? I love providing freedom, right? If one developer wants to use their a specific IDE, allow them to do it, right? I really get frustrated when I see all these job ads out there that like, oh, you have to know Eclipse, and that means, pick the favorite IDE, and then you interview, and they're asking you about the IDE. It's because nobody can do the builds, and they're not doing it via a build tool. It's done through the project, and then they have somebody that's helping manage them. And I believe, and this is just me, and I know it's not a popular belief, but I believe we should use build tools and then allow the developers to use the IDEs or editors. I don't care if somebody is using Notepad on Windows and that's their favorite platform, have at it, right? I don't care what the tool is, as long as you're effective and efficient and you enjoy it, go for it. Let my developers do what they want to do. And so I know a lot of teams don't like that. They want everybody to be uniform and conform to it. I just flat out disagree. Give people the freedom to be successful.
I think that's, well, I
know
know,
it's not
I
gonna
know.
be a popular
Well,
belief.
actually, no, I think it is. It's definitely a more popular belief amongst developers. And I know the ecosystem, the culture you're coming from, and I can see where management wants to go and standardize on those things, or project managers who don't understand the technical. From a developer perspective nowadays, I think that's certainly a popular belief, actually, and that might be the source of contention.
Yeah.
Is that, and understandably so, is if you're going to use something different than the rest of your team, you better know how to use it.
Yeah, you're responsible for it. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the funny part is my whole team back in the day used Eclipse, and I was responsible for managing Eclipse, but I didn't use Eclipse on the team. Right? I was the only developer on the team. I used Emacs back in the day because I wanted it to load fast. Eclipse was too slow to load, but that's a personal thing, right?
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why we really heavily encourage junior engineers, junior software developers to not use an IDE and to use either just a text editor or just the command line with the command line build tools, so you understand what it is you're doing with the IDE. The IDE should be a tool to automate your workflow, not a crutch to lean on to do your job for you. So you just have a button to click.
I used to get so mad in interviews when they would talk about doing things in the IDE with drag and drop.
Oh yeah, that's still a thing for like mobile apps and desktop apps that you can do that, and I don't get it.
Yeah.
Then again, I haven't tried to do it, and I think there is some merit to some UI things in it, but I think as a general rule, if you don't understand what's going on underneath, you shouldn't just rely on it.
As long as you understand what's going on behind the scenes, I'm good with it.
Yep.
It's when you don't understand what's going on behind the scenes. Because a lot of times, it was great to get, the first 80% of the software written that way. But then the last 20%, we would have to go under the covers and fix things. And those that didn't know how to do it never get there. So that was my complaint there. So anyway, I think it's important to understand the concept of build tools, making sure that you are using a build tool that you can check into revision control, right? And the whole team can use that so that they can keep up to date. And it gets to the point where, if we're using a standard revision control, standard build tool, all I have to do is get my access, download the project, and then I should just know how it compiles. I shouldn't have to go pull Julio aside and ask him, hey, I can't figure out how to build this project, right? It should just be simple, straightforward. And so that's one of the benefits of using build tools. And it doesn't depend on the IDE. Download your favorite IDE, download the build environment, and then just go for it. Did we miss anything in build tools?
I don't think so.
Oh, and if anybody has questions, feel free to pop them in there. You know what? I did open the link last week, and it was extremely helpful.
Oh, to have the chat open?
Yeah, I could see it on my computer here.
Oh, that is a good idea, Brian. Who would have thought?
Yes, these obvious things.
No, I don't think. I think from a standpoint of build tools, understanding what's going on underneath is the core of it. Having something that is universal and independent of your IDE that you can run on the command line, that you can automate are the key points there. And that nowadays you don't really, again, unless you're doing something with an older tool or on an older project, you're not going to start a new project with Make. There are better tools out there. That problem has been solved for dependency management and things of that nature. So it's just identifying for whatever language, for whatever tool you're building, using the right set of build scripts and build tools to go and do that.